very same year, 1948, Leaf released the iconic Jackie Robinson rookie card that we all know about, there was another Robinson who was filling stadiums. He was leaving fans awestruck, he was a celebrity among celebrities, and he was blazing a trail of greatness that even to this day seems unmatched. Many will say he was the greatest of all time.
Sugar Ray Robinson, who was a 6-foot, 147-pounder. He's like 6 inches taller than Floyd Mayweather. And deadly power in both hands, and also lightning fast.
When they say Sugar Ray Robinson was the greatest fighter pound for pound, meaning that I imagine if he was a heavyweight fighting the same style, he'd be the greatest. I would have to admit, I would have to say yes.
I think pound for pound, he was the greatest of everyone that stepped in the ring. Ray Robinson was the best fighter that ever stepped in the ring.
I've never seen a champion quite as determined as he. I've never seen a fighter throw punches so short that does so much damage.
You ever watched any of the older fighters fight, like in the 30s or 40s or 50s?
Not that far back. I watched.
You ever watched Sugar Ray Robinson fight?
I have watched Sugar Ray Robinson.
Isn't he amazing?
It's crazy.
Let me talk to you about great fighters. Sugar Ray Robinson had 40 fights, right? 40-0. And then he lost one fight, right? And after he lost that one fight, he went 80 fights undefeated. You know, so he was like 100. So the record was like 174-1.
Right. That's crazy.
And around 85 knockouts.
Dempsey, one of the hardest punchers of all time, has seen every great fighter from the roaring 20s to the present. At 83, Jack declares that Ray Robinson, pound for pound, is the greatest combination puncher he has ever seen.
The 1948 Leaf Sugar Ray Robinson is without a doubt his most important card. It's his mainstream rookie card, and to this day, many will call that very boxer the greatest pound-for-pound fighter who ever lived. The 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson is probably one of my favorite cards of all time, but let's compare the two. Let's take a look at their rarity. In comparison, the 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson, which is very rare, especially in great eye appeal condition, there are 1,278 of them that have been graded to this day by PSA. As we look over to the 48 Sugar Ray Robinson, it's much, 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 much more rare, with only a total of 255 graded by PSA. That gives you a little bit of an idea. In top condition, only 14 have been graded a PSA 8, and the very highest graded in existence is a solo 8.5. Sugar Ray Robinson was quick, strong, fast, explosive, elusive, and for all intents and purposes, virtually unbeatable. He was never physically knocked out. It was Sugar Ray who inspired Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather. In fact, Muhammad Ali called Robinson my king, my master, my idol. You can't mention the Mount Rushmore of boxing without saying his name. The similarities between Sugar Ray Robinson and Jackie Robinson are way too many to list. They lived in the same era, they weren't allowed to eat at the same restaurants, shop at the same stores, visit the same hotels, and they were booed by many of the same spectators because of their skin color. Yet in spite of it all, these legends overcame and became great. The 1948 Leaf boxing set, like its baseball counterpart, is one of the most classically and colorfully designed sports art sets we've ever seen. In fact, the Joe Louis card is also considered his best mainstream card and maybe one of his most important cards. They called him the Brown Bomber. The 48 Louis card deserves its own profile. Louis is widely considered one of the greatest boxers of all time and one of the most important civil rights figures in all of history. What people don't know is that these boxers from the 1940s and 50s were fighting in the ring and fighting for their lives outside of the ring. They wanted to be seen as more than just the color of their skin. In fact, Sugar Ray Robinson would later say many times he never actually enjoyed boxing. He was amazing at it, and many will say the greatest of all time, but he fought to make a better life for himself and his family. What's mind-blowing is this was in a day and age when boxers didn't take months and even years off. They fought sometimes weekly, and if they were good, they fought everyone who was thrown at them. You didn't have the same luxury to turn down fights you thought you might lose. In fact, in 1947, Sugar Ray tried to back out of a fight versus challenger Jimmy Doyle because he had an intense and disturbing dream the night before the match that he killed Doyle after a knockout blow. But those in charge would not allow the match to be canceled, and they were able to talk Robinson out of it. They even had a Catholic priest come and talk him out of it. Doyle was a mixed-race Creole fighter who experts say desperately wanted the fight against Robinson so he could buy his mother a house. In the 8th round of the fight, a left hook from Robinson knocked out Doyle, who was later rushed to the hospital. He never regained consciousness and died a few hours later. Robinson would later say that that dream was a warning from God, but he allowed others to talk him into fighting Doyle. In one of the classiest moves in history, Robinson gave the earnings of his next 4 fights to Doyle's mother so she could buy that house she always dreamed of. As a sports historian and someone who loves sports cards, it's just hard to argue that the 1948 Leaf cards aren't in a league of their own in many regards. They're rare, they came out at the end of World War II, they're true pieces of art, they preserve and tell history, and these men were athletic wonders of the time. 48 Leaf cards strangely seem more relevant today than ever before. The hobby is trending towards rare, trending towards important, trending towards artwork, so it does make sense that these are coming back to our attention. I love to collect Patrick Mahomes cards, but it seems like in only 5 years of his career, he has literally hundreds, maybe thousands of cards. It's overwhelming to know which cards are the most important or which cards to focus on. So when I hold the 48 Leaf Ray Robinson, that's it. That's the card. An all-time great with one card that is hands down his most important and hands down his best. In 1948, when these cards were released, people have to understand that baseball was clearly number 1 and boxing was a close, very close number 2. And you didn't really even hear about football and basketball at the time. That wasn't until later. So when these cards were released, these were the big-time stars that everybody wanted. So in a way, it brings me back to the simplicity of the old days. If you want the best card of the boxer that many experts say is the greatest of all time, there really is only one option. The 1948 Leaf, number 64, Sugar Ray Robinson.
Ain't nobody as fast as Sugar Ray. Ain't nobody that can hit with the blast like Sugar Ray. Ain't nobody in the future or past like Sugar Ray. Ain't nobody, ain't nobody.